It's been 5 months since the DJI Mavic 4 Pro was released, and in that time I've flown it a ton, gotten a lot of great shots with it, and learned some of the great and not so great things about it. So in this video I'm going to share my experiences with it, go over its pros and cons, and give you my thoughts on whether or not it's worth buying. So the first pro, actually the first several pros, are related to the camera. The first pro, and this is one of the main features, is that the Mavic 4 Pro shoots in full-blown 6K. The 6K footage out of the Mavic 4 Pro is super detailed. It looks amazing on a big monitor, and having that extra resolution lets you crop into the shot in post to reframe your shot or add some extra movement or create an effect like a dolly zoom and still maintain full 4K quality. Honestly, this is some of the best video quality that you can get without spending $20,000 on an Inspire. The Mavic 4 Pro shoots 6K footage at up to 60 frames per second, so you can even slow the footage down in full 6K resolution. Now, the 2.5x and 6x telecameras obviously aren't 6K resolution because they're using smaller sensors, but they are pretty decent 4K quality as well. And one of the things that really stands out about the 6K on the Mavic 4 Pro is that there's absolutely no limits in how you can shoot at 6K or the max resolution on the other cameras. There's no decrease in quality, decrease in dynamic range, limits on what features like ActiveTrack you can use. There's none of that. You can shoot at the full quality, full 6K resolution with this drone and not sacrifice any features. The next pro of the Mavic 4 Pro is that you can shoot in true D-Log color profile, not just D-Log M. D-Log is what you might call a true log profile, whereas D-Log M is just kind of a somewhat flat profile. D-Log M does give you a lot more color grading flexibility, but it is not really a full-blown log profile, and so it doesn't have quite as much color grading flexibility. The D-Log footage out of the Mavic 4 Pro grades really nicely and has a ton of color flexibility, and I absolutely love having that feature on the Mavic 4 Pro. D-Log has a more natural highlight roll-off than D-Log M, and just overall has a more natural cinematic tone curve, which helps you get more filmic, cinematic looking shots with your drone, and also makes it fit in better with other high-end cameras. Another perk of having true D-Log on the Mavic 4 Pro, you can use the built-in color space transform workflow in DaVinci Resolve, which is the standard workflow for log profiles for any camera, and just makes it easier to take the log footage from your drone and integrate it into the same workflow and color match it to all your other cameras. By the way, if you want to get amazing cinematic shots with your Mavic 4 Pro or any other drone like what you've been watching in this video, there's two things that you won't want to miss. First of all, I've made a PDF checklist of all of my best cinematic settings for the Mavic 4 Pro, and I'm giving it away completely for free. Link to download that is in the description. And second, I have a completely free 45-minute drone filmmaking training where I share my top 10 secrets to getting cinematic drone shots, covering everything from the best camera settings to use, how to compose your shots, how to get smooth natural movements, how to work with natural light and find the best time of day to shoot, how to edit your videos, how to color grade them, and a whole bunch more. And again, it's completely free, no strings attached, and a link to that will be in the description as well. Now back to the review. The next pro of the Mavic 4 Pro is the 2.5 times and 6 times telecameras. This is one of my favorite features on the drone. The telecameras let you get a totally different perspective than just a wide angle camera, and especially having the 6 times 168mm super telecamera lets you get shots that you just can't get with almost any other drone. If you look at a lot of aerial shots in movies and high-end productions, a lot of them are using a tighter telephoto focal length rather than a wide angle camera. And that's because a longer focal length compresses the foreground and the background and makes them look closer together. It just makes your shots look a lot more grand and epic, and it also enhances parallax, makes it look like the background is moving faster in relation to your subject. Now, just a few years ago, to get those kind of shots, it used to take either a chopper with a camera on it or a big $100,000 drone, but over the last few years, we've seen DJI adding telephoto cameras to their drones, and the Mavic 4 Pro really just takes that to the next level. The telephoto cameras on the Mavic 4 Pro also let you get closer shots of subjects while being further away so that you don't disturb the subjects or crash your drone. And telecameras just let you get more variety in your shots, so you aren't aren't just stuck with one focal length, one type of shot. You can get a sequence of shots with different focal lengths and be able to cut between those and make a lot more interesting videos. And the telephoto cameras on the Mavic 4 Pro are some of the best quality telecameras I've seen. Obviously, they do fall short of the main camera because the main camera has a 4/3 size image sensor, which is much larger than the 1/1.3 inch sensor on the 2.5 times camera, which is the same size as the Air 3S's camera, or the 1/1.5 inch sensor on the 6 times telephoto camera. And the reason that the telephoto cameras are 2.5 times and 6 times instead of 3 times and 7 times like on older drones is because they changed the wide angle camera focal length, which we'll get to in a minute, but the focal lengths are basically the same at 70mm for the 2.5 times camera and 168mm for the 6 times camera. But there is one huge upgrade to the telecameras versus previous drones, which is actually my next pro, and that is having D-Log on all 3 cameras. Having the D-Log color profile as well as D-Log M and Hybrid Log Gamma across all 3 cameras is amazing because it lets you get consistent colors across all 3 of those focal lengths and makes it much easier to smoothly edit the footage together. Now obviously the look is going to be just a tiny bit different because the 4/3 sensor has better dynamic range, etc., but the color science is actually very similar between the cameras, so you can quite easily cut between different cameras when you're editing without having to do a bunch of work to get the look to match. And the next pro of this drone is that it has an adjustable aperture on the main wide angle camera. And this is an absolutely huge feature. This lets you adjust your exposure without having to change the shutter speed from the setting that gives you natural motion blur. With the Mavic 4 Pro, even in bright sun, you can usually get a correct exposure with pretty close to 180-degree shutter speed without ND filters just by stopping the aperture all the way down. Now, the sharpest aperture range on this drone is between f2 and f4, and it becomes less sharp in the f5.6 through f11 range. So ideally, you'll want to use ND filters to cut down the amount of light that's coming in, and then just do the fine adjustment with the aperture so that you can have the aperture set into that sharpest range. And the filters that I use and recommend are these Freewell split NDs. They sent them to me, but I use Freewell filters all the time anyway. They are what I recommend, and I'll leave a link down in the description if you want to get ND filters for your Mavic 4 Pro. Anyway, with all that said, it's super useful to be able to fine tune your exposure without touching the ISO or shutter speed, or be able to get a correct shutter speed if you forget your ND filters. The next pro on the Mavic 4 Pro is the bitrate. On some other drones like the Air 3S, DJI cut the bitrate, but the Mavic 4 Pro has nice juicy 180 megabits per second bitrate in 6K H.265 encoding and 130 megabits per second in 4K on the telecameras. This is way more than some other drones like the Air 3S, which comes in at only 80 megabits per second in 4K, and this just ensures that you have plenty of color data to work with in post so that you can color grade your shots, get the look you want, and not end up with as many weird artifacts. Now, I just got the regular Fly More combo. I didn't get the Creator combo that has the crazy high bitrate all-I codec, but for most things, that's just gonna give you huge files anyway, and you won't really be able to notice a quality difference, especially if the footage is going to be used for online viewing. The next pro of the Mavic 4 Pro is the dynamic range, or how bright and dark areas it can capture at the same time. I actually tested out the dynamic range of the Mavic 4 Pro's wide angle camera in the studio versus the Air 3S, which would kind of be the next cheaper drone to compare it to, and it has a lot better dynamic range. It has much cleaner shadows, so you can boost those shadows up and color grade your shot to get a lot more dynamic range out of it before you're just ending up with an unusable amount of noise in those shadows. And I've also noticed this just in shooting with the drone. The dynamic range just feels a lot better than other drones I've used, and it is honestly quite impressive. The next pro is vertical shooting, and this is also kind of a con, but I'll cover that in just a minute. On the Mavic 4 Pro, you can flip the gimbal to vertical to use the whole camera to shoot vertical videos and photos with any of the 3 cameras. And on the wide angle camera, you can also switch into vertical 4K mode with the camera set to horizontal, and you get a high quality 4K vertical crop out of the full height of the sensor. This is basically the only professional grade drone that lets you shoot vertical photos and videos, and so it is a great option if you need to, for example, shoot vertical content for clients. There are some issues though with vertical shooting, and I'll get to those in the cons section. The next pro is low light quality. The low light on the wide angle camera is really good. I can bump the ISO up to ISO 3200 and get reasonably clean shots. They need a little bit of post-processing denoising, but they are perfectly good and usable, whereas you just really can't do that with another drone, like for example, the Air 3S. And the next pro of this drone is the speed. This thing goes fast. In sport mode, it can hit up to 60 miles per hour without a tailwind. And yes, it actually can do that. I've tested it. It very easily gets to 50 something miles per hour and can actually hit 60 unassisted. Now, to access this maximum speed, you actually have to go into the settings under gain and expo tuning settings and increase the max speed all the way up to 60 miles per hour. It's not set that way by default, but it is available, and that makes it, to my knowledge, the fastest DJI drone aside from FPV drones and the Inspire series. This opens up a lot of possibilities. You can chase things that are faster, like cars driving faster. You can just get faster shots flying over landscapes. You can get the drone to where you want to go to put it in position to capture a shot faster. It's just all around better to have the option to go faster when you want to, and it can also go up and down extremely quickly. Now, I think it may not be quite as quick to accelerate as the Air 3S. The Air 3S just feels a little bit more snappy, but the Mavic 4 Pro definitely beats it out by quite a bit in the speed department. The next pro of this drone is the battery life. The Mavic 4 Pro has the longest battery life, I think, on any DJI drone. You can just keep flying and flying and flying and flying. This is absolutely great for shooting things like hyperlapses. I actually often don't shoot hyperlapses at cool locations where I have limited batteries because I don't want to deplete an entire battery just to get one short clip. But with the Mavic 4 Pro, I was able to shoot videos of a location, and then once I was done with the shots that I needed, I still had enough juice left in the battery to shoot an entire hyperlapse, which let me get some really cool shots that I just would not have been able to get otherwise. The next pro is having Spotlight and ActiveTrack with very few limitations. Spotlight and ActiveTrack are obviously great. They've been on DJI drones for quite a while, but on the Mavic 4 Pro, both Spotlight and ActiveTrack work in all resolutions and frame rates, 6K, 6K 60 frames per second, even including slow-mo 4K 120 frames per second, and they work across all three cameras, except on the 6x camera, you only have Spotlight mode and not ActiveTrack or point of interest mode, but Spotlight mode actually works surprisingly well even on the 6x camera. The next pro is white balance tint adjustment. This is something that I don't think I've seen on a drone before. Usually you just have a color temperature adjustment. You can either make the shot warmer or cooler, but this is the first DJI drone where you also have a tint adjustment between green and magenta. This is absolutely great for shooting at night or under artificial light where you might have some kind of a color cast that just warm and cool can't correct for. The next pro is photos. I'm not mostly a photos guy, but I occasionally do shoot some photos, especially when I'm testing out drones, and the photos out of this drone have amazing resolution and quality, even in the 25 megapixel mode. Now, this does have a 100 megapixel mode, but it's not really 100 megapixels. It's some kind of quad Bayer tech that splits up each pixel into 4 pixels and quadruples the number of megapixels, but you're not really getting 100 megapixel quality like you would with something like a medium format camera with a 100 megapixel sensor. But all in all, I've got to say the photos out of this drone are some of the best photos I've ever seen out of a folding drone. And our last pro is that the Mavic 4 Pro is surprisingly quiet for its size. Now, it's obviously not whisper quiet. It's not going to be as quiet as something like a mini series drone, but for the size, it is surprisingly quiet. It's not all that much more loud and obnoxious than an Air series drone, which is kind of surprising given that it's way bigger, but it has a relatively low-pitched sound, which makes the prop noise a lot less obnoxious and noticeable. Now, you might notice that I haven't mentioned anything about the 360 gimbal. I honestly just don't really care for it that much. It might be useful in like a couple situations where you kind of want to create an unsettling feeling by shooting at a Dutch angle, having the horizon angled or kind of twisting to create kind of a feeling of confusion and being off balance. But honestly, I've only used it like once or maybe twice, and I would have been just fine if DJI left that feature out. So there you have the things that I like about the Mavic 4 Pro, but it's not all perfect. Now it's time to move on to the things that I don't love. So con number one is that the wide angle camera has a focal length of 28mm instead of 24mm like most other camera drones. I feel like 24mm is kind of a sweet spot. It's not super fisheye wide, but it's also not too tight. I think there's a reason that it's even used on a lot of phones as the main camera, but for some reason DJI decided to abandon that in favor of a 28mm focal length on that wide angle camera. Now 24mm versus 28mm doesn't sound like a huge difference, but when you're actually out shooting with it, especially when you're used to a slightly wider camera, it can be just a little bit annoying. Now you might say you can just back up, get further away from your subject, but sometimes you just can't do that. For example, if you're in a constrained space like shooting a waterfall, or if you just can't go any higher, sometimes that 28mm focal length just keeps you from capturing the full scene that you want to. And this is probably one of my biggest frustrations in actually using this drone, is that the camera's just sometimes not quite wide enough. The second con is that this drone is big and heavy. It's legitimately huge, and it's heavy enough that just doing this review and holding the drone, I've kept moving it back and forth between my two hands because my fingers were getting tired of holding it here, which has never happened to me with lighter drones like the Air 3S. And after flying the Mavic 4 Pro for a while, when I pull out my Air series drone, it's like, wow, this drone is actually small, which is actually not small, but when you compare them, it is quite a bit smaller and also quite a bit lighter. And where this really can become an issue is if you're wanting to hike with your drone, hike into some kind of a location. It can be a lot to carry on hikes. I did it a couple times, hiked down to a waterfall, hiked up to the top of a mountain at sunrise, and it's definitely heavy, and it definitely gets to you in your pack a lot more than a mini or even an Air series drone, especially once you get the controller and everything in the bag with it. And even when you fold it up, it is just still quite massive. It just takes up a lot of space in a backpack or a bag wherever you are carrying it, and that can be an issue when you're traveling with your gear. So this definitely might not be the drone for you if being light and portable is your main priority. The next con is the 4K 120 frames per second crop. On the wide angle camera on this drone, there's a pretty significant crop in 4K 120 frames per second, which is in addition to the 28mm focal length, and that just really makes your field of view undesirably tight. It is not great for wide shots, anything where you want to be able to see a wider perspective. Most other DJI drones don't have this. My guess is it's just a function of the particular 6K sensor that they are using. It's what they had to do. I get it, but it's not ideal. Now, there's no crop in slow motion on the telephoto cameras in 4K 120 frames per second on the 2.5 times camera, or in 4K 100 frames per second on the 6X camera. So this is just an issue with the wide angle camera. It's not the end of the world, but it's definitely something to keep in mind if you shoot a lot of slow motion footage. The next con is ActiveTrack. Now, I know I kind of had this as a pro earlier, that ActiveTrack works in all the different modes, and that is true, but the performance of ActiveTrack in tight spaces like flying down a road with trees on either side is not great. The Mavic 4 Pro tries to get way too creative with where it is going to go. It tries to go and find the shortest route and gets caught up in all kinds of bushes. When I was testing it, I was afraid it was going to crash multiple times because it was just going wild. I actually tested the Mavic 4 Pro versus the Air 3S and the Neo, and both of those drones beat the Mavic 4 Pro. And if you want to see how all of these drones compare for ActiveTrack, you can check that video out. I'll put a link in the description, or you can just search it up on the channel. Now, out in the open, the Mavic 4 Pro does great. It can actually track cars faster than any other folding drone that I know of, but it's not really built for active tracking in tight spaces. The next con of the Mavic 4 Pro is the gimbal tilt in vertical shooting. Yes, the Mavic 4 Pro can shoot vertical videos and it can flip its gimbal to vertical, but, and this is a big but, you are limited to 10 degrees of up and down tilt when the camera is flipped into vertical mode. And this is with camera tilt expansion turned on in the settings, and you definitely tend to bump the camera up and down if it is tilted and you're flying it very aggressively. Now, this is not ideal, it's just kind of built into the way the gimbal is designed. But as I mentioned earlier, there is a vertical 4K crop mode out of the 6K on the wide angle camera, and that will let you tilt the camera all the way up and down. Still not great, but it is what it is. And our final con is the obstacle avoidance camera placement. On most previous drones, the obstacle avoidance cameras were up on the top of the drone, and down on the bottom were just some downward facing sensors, and we all just got along fine. But on the Mavic 4 Pro, we have these directly on the top and directly on the bottom that stick out. And having these obstacle avoidance cameras on the bottom makes it super easy for them to get scratched if you try to take off from a surface that isn't perfectly level. I actually had this happen to me. I took off from a rock that wasn't level, and I pretty badly scratched the center obstacle avoidance camera on the bottom and slightly scratched one of the other ones as well. Now on older drones, the bottom cameras weren't fisheye cameras, and they were almost a little bit recessed into the drone, so you just weren't nearly as likely to get them scratched. But on the Mavic 4 Pro, because they are these wide angle fisheye cameras, they are kind of sticking out and there's really nothing to protect them, and so they're super easy to get damaged. In my opinion, this is really a design flaw, because if you know anything about drone pilots, we like to take off in all sorts of places, and even if you just set the drone down on a rock or something, if it isn't perfectly flat, you could easily scratch these bottom cameras. Now I do have to say, in the Mavic 4 Pro's credit, obstacle avoidance still seems to work fine even with a pretty scratched lens on the bottom, so that is good. But there's also a second issue that I've run into with the camera placement, and that is that in vision assist mode, because the cameras are directly on the top and directly on the bottom, there's a very noticeable stitching seam right along the side, which is usually where I need to look with the vision assist cameras to make sure that I'm not running into anything. And that stitching seam just makes it a lot harder to accurately see what is out there to the side of the drone and not run into it, especially when you have vision assist shrunk down into a little box in the corner. To me, that's a not insignificant advantage compared to other drones like the Air series that have their cameras positioned so there aren't any significant stitching seams to the side and you can much more clearly see where you're headed. So all in all, final thoughts, is the Mavic 4 Pro worth the pretty hefty price tag if you can even get one? I absolutely love mine. It's a fantastic drone, the best image quality out there, the only drone with a 168mm camera with log. All in all, the best of the best. And if you are a professional drone pilot or an advanced hobbyist who wants the best of the best in camera drones, I'd say it's worth every single penny. And this is not in any way sponsored by DJI. I bought the drone myself, paid a lot for it. It's just that good. And none of the cons are really a deal breaker for me, especially since I have other drones that work better in certain situations, like when I need a small light drone for travel. But if you're just getting into drones or trying to get the most drone for your money, especially given that you can get the Air 3S for about half the price, it's probably going to be a little bit overkill to get the Mavic 4 Pro and really hard to justify for the price for a lot of people. It's an amazing aerial filmmaking tool, but it's just not going to be worth it for everyone. Now, if you want to watch another video on the Mavic 4 Pro, you can click right here. And if you want to learn how to shoot amazing cinematic drone videos like what you've been seeing in this review, I have an entire 12-hour drone filmmaking course where I teach every single part of my process for creating professional drone videos, from finding locations and planning shoots to the best settings to use to getting smooth cinematic movements to full sections on editing and color grading in both DaVinci Resolve and Premiere Pro, plus a whole lot more. If you want to check that out, go to flyingfilmmakerpro.com or link is in the description. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a like and make sure to subscribe for more videos like it.